Hey everybody, this is John the Other, obviously. And I have a question for you. Did you know that in Canada, judges presiding over sexual assault cases are now being trained in a phony pseudoscience so that the traditional indicators of lying and story fabrication by a prosecution witness will now be interpreted as indicators of truthfulness? I'm not kidding. In fact, even though it's not yet the law in Canada, Bill C-337 will make it a legal requirement that new judges complete what the Globe and Mail calls a comprehensive education in sexual assault law and social context. Link in the low bar. The new law, once passed, will also change the criminal code to require courts to provide written reasons in sexual assault decisions, which seems reasonable until you learn that court findings of not guilty in sexual assaults are routinely appealed by the Crown prosecution, and in some cases substituted in the appeal for a guilty verdict without even a retrial. Now, if you're an American listening to this, I'll repeat that. In Canadian criminal courts, the court's decision of not guilty is regularly overturned by the Crown prosecution appeal of a not guilty finding, in a very obvious defiance of the idea that it is immoral or unethical to subject a person to repeated retrials on the same charge. In fact, tiny nuances in word choices by judges are regularly used to overturn acquittals on the basis that the judge may have employed what advocates call rape myths in the judge's reasoning. And if you wonder what rape myths are, the best answer I can give you is that a rape myth is any logic that can lead to an unfavorable credibility assessment of a complainant's testimony. And I am aware that this definition sounds like sarcasm. Now, you can read the text of the Bill 337, link to that in the low bar, but what is actually in the training curriculum that the Globe and Mail calls a comprehensive education in sexual assault law and social context? What does a comprehensive education in sexual assault law and social context actually mean? That's a question that Canadian lawyer Tom Engel wanted to ask, so he made an application to the National Judicial Organization to reveal its training materials for sexual assault law. You might even imagine that what our judges are taught should be a matter of public record, seeing that the courts are a public forum and justice practiced in secret is not justice. But Mr. Engel's application to have those materials released was refused on the basis that the training materials were irrelevant to the guilt or the innocence of Mr. Engel's client at the time. But I don't think that reason given is correct or even truthful. In fact, if judges are being provided special instruction on how to decide cases in Canadian courts outside of law school, I think people might like to know what those instructions are. After all, the courts are not supposed to be the policy tool of a particular political ideology or party. In fact, the courts are supposed to be independent of political influence, and they're supposed to be a sober break on overenthusiastic legislation that tramples on people's civil rights. Kim Pate, the former head of the Elizabeth Fry Society, is on record herself supporting Engel's request for transparency in this training. But we don't actually need a cooperative court to inform the public what brave new ideology judges will be indoctrinated to follow, because we know who the architects of this re-education are, and we can see what they are already pushing. Two of the principal architects are Laurie Haskell and Brenda Kosman, who were both brought in to help with the re-education and orientation of former Justice Robin Camp. Camp, in case you don't remember, is the judge removed from the bench after asking a sex assault complainant why she had not kept her knees together. But this question, why can't you keep your knees together, which was endlessly repeated while Camp was portrayed as the worst and most sexist misogynist alive, has been completely mischaracterized in all media. The judge was not asking the claimant why she was sexually promiscuous. He was asking about the physical geometry of a claimed sex act in which the complainant claimed that her behind was sunk into the bottom of a bathroom sink and her skinny jeans were still wound around her ankles, binding her legs together. Robin Camp was trying to figure out if her claim was possible as she described it. He was not asking about her sexual promiscuity or her lack of discretion, but he was removed from the bench to be re-educated based on the purposeful lie that he was a woman-hating slut-shamer. The complete transcript of the case is linked in the description of this video. And Justice Camp's question about knees together is on page 119, but you should begin reading from about page 116 to get the actual context of his question. Link in the low bar. So yes, you were lied to by your national news so that the law could be rewritten and your civil rights eroded, while you were tricked into thinking it was to protect women. Do you enjoy being manipulated and lied to by journalists? Also linked below is Kosman's article, in which she spits angrily about having Robin Camp removed from the bench when what she wanted to do was retrain him and weaponize him, then turn him back loose in the court. And if you Google the trauma-informed model, you will find a whole lot of very impressive educational and scientific-sounding literature with the admirable goal of convicting rapists of their crimes. And the proponents of trauma-informed techniques will explain at length that the neurology of trauma tells us that a woman suffering a traumatic event, such as a sexual assault, loses the ability to form coherent and sharp memories of the event due to the role of the amygdala in the laying down of memories in the brain. At least that is what the trauma-informed investigation specialists who make a living training police and judges said up until late 2017, when journalist Emily Yoff, writing for The Atlantic, published a 3-part series revealing that the neuroscience being used to promote the trauma-informed model was pseudoscience and flim-flam. Link to those articles also in the low bar. If you don't want to read that, there's a SoundCloud link as well. But it turns out it's not just a matter of snake oil salesmen using flim-flam to sell training courses for quick cash to police and judges. Current research on trauma and memory indicates the opposite from the claims of the trauma-informed approach. According to research from Rutgers University, published on ScienceDaily.com, I quote, "Women who are sexually assaulted experience more vivid memories than women coping with the aftermath of other traumatic, life-altering events not associated with sexual violence even decades later." Now, the alternative claim, the false claim, which is the one according to trauma-informed advocates, is that a victim of sexual assault will have only hazy and ill-defined and non-verbal body-based memories. This is, of course, if we are to believe it, this would justify the conviction and the incarceration of everyone accused by the now commonplace false accusers who, when questioned about their victimization, can supply only vague answers and cliched dialogue of the supposed events. As citizens, we each have an enormous liberty to voice our political views, to object to dysfunctional or corrupt laws or policies. But judges do not have such a liberty. Judges, for all their power on the bench, are required to be politically silent, even as they are targeted for scorn or ridicule or career termination by ideological academics and other activists within the media. And these judges, legally bound to silence on political issues, are the ones being indoctrinated into a cult based not just on bad science, but based on actual and overt falsehood about how the mind reacts to victimization. But you and your kids and everybody else you care about are going to be at these judges' mercy once they're re-educated. And judges who don't toe the social justice party line are routinely removed from the bench by activists like Haskell and Kosman, which is why, in addition to being prohibited from participating in political dialogue, these judges are also terrorized by the media and the academic social justice mob. Judges like Robin Camp are an object lesson to them. It might even be productive if judges, in all their legal power, could fight back against the terror of media censure and the feminist mob demanding they be fired or disbarred, but they can't speak. And while we still drift on the lost idea of judicial independence from politics, judges can't speak in their own defense. But I can, and so can you. Which is why I am pointing out today that the terrorizing of judges and their political re-education is not actually an attack on crusty old men in black robes. It's an attack on you and your basic civil rights and the rights of your kids. It's an attack on everybody you care about. So don't just sit there. The Lighthouse Project is a Canadian nonprofit organization dedicated to protecting the rights of the falsely accused. If you would like to help in this effort, you can donate to the Lighthouse Project through links to Patreon and PayPal in the low bar. Thanks very much for listening, and have a lovely day.